Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, SME Next. My name is Priyesh and I work with Tally Solutions in the Middle East region, and I will be your host for this session. Just a little housekeeping before we get started to ensure a flawless experience. All the participants will remain on mute throughout the session to avoid any noise or disturbances. Please be informed that we are recording this session, and in case of any network disturbances, if you miss out some part of the discussion, you will be able to revisit the video on our website later. Currently, most of us are working from home or from remote areas, hence I apologize in advance for any network interruptions or technical glitches that may occur. However, we will try our best to make this experience seamless. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, please type them in the question box on your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the discussion, and we'll also have time for some question and answers at the end. Once again, welcome to SME Next. So last year, we celebrated International MSME Day on the 27th of June by meeting our esteemed customers and showing our gratitude for their trust in us. However, this time around, times are difficult, and hence we are celebrating this occasion in a different manner. Situations might have changed, but our intent remains the same: to stand by you through all ups and downs. SME Next, our webinar for today, is designed to address problems faced by MSMEs as a result of the pandemic, solutions that can help bring about a change, and the role of technology in reviving business. And there's more to it. But before we jump into the session, I would like to emphasize on the importance of MSME Day. MSME stands for micro and small and medium-sized enterprises. According to the data provided by International Council for Small Business, ICSB, formal and informal micro, small, medium-sized enterprises make up over 90% of all firms and account, on average for 70% of total employment and 50% of GDP. And that is why the General Assembly declared 27 June as MSME Day across the world, to raise public awareness of their contribution to sustainable development and the global economy. And today, we salute the efforts of MSME businesses. We salute you for your contribution to the global economy. A big round of applause for all of you present here. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to the experts. Our panel members today are 6 highly qualified and distinguished personalities. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to please welcome them all with your virtual applause while I introduce them one by one to you. CA Mayank Sahni. Mayank Sahni is the Managing Director of Max Growth Consulting, which is a boutique multinational tax advisory, corporate finance advisory, business restructuring, and strategy advisory company with 15 offices spread across the globe. Mayank is a high caliber tax advisory and corporate finance advisory with around 21 years of experience. He's highly qualified professional who has completed 3 professional qualifications of CFA, CA, and CS from CFA Institute USA, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and Institute of Company Secretaries of India, respectively. He has worked with some of the top-notch consulting firms like Ernst & Young in UAE for around 8 years, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC in India, and Crowe in UAE, where he was the partner for tax advisory services. He's a well-known name. He's a tax expert in UAE, and his comments, articles, and views on all aspects in relation to tax matters are regularly covered in Khaleej Times, Gulf News, and The National, which are the leading English daily newspapers of UAE. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome CA Mayank Sahni as our first panel member. I'm sure you all can see him on the screen now. Next, we have Fazila Gopalani, Head of Middle East, ACCA. As Head of Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA, in the Middle East, Fazila has responsibility for leading the operations in 11 countries, representing more than 20,000 students, affiliates, and members across the region, who work in all sectors and all levels of business across the Middle East. Fazila also works with educational institutions and government bodies to encourage new generations to undertake a career in accountancy and finance. Fazila is an FCCA member since 2004 and has over 15 years of experience in the field of accounting and finance. Fazila has been the head of education for ACCA in the Middle East for past 4 years, and she previously was a senior manager at PwC Academy in Dubai. Let us put our hands together for Fazila. Hi, Fazila. Next, we have C. Anurag Chaturvedi. As CEO and managing partner of Chartered House Tax Consultancy, a collaborating firm of Anderson Global, Anurag Chaturvedi is the Middle East indirect tax leader for Anderson Global. For more than 18 years, Anurag has had a distinguished career serving large and complex global clients and has served as a specialist in tax enablement, automation, business transformation, governance, and risk management across multiple countries. He previously led the senior advisory position with Big Four and leading global firms and is currently Secretary of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Dubai Chapter's Executive Committee. He regularly writes to media and in the marketplace relative to tax, economic business trends, the new business reality, and the dynamics of technology impacting businesses. He is regularly featured in Bloomberg News, Khaleej Times, and The National as a VAT expert. We welcome you, Anurag. Next, we have Hani Garg. Hani is the head of business development for trade EMEA at Swift. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the name Swift, as we know Swift in the bank Swift code. Hani has over 22 years of experience working for banks like Standard Chartered, ABN AMRO, ICICI Bank, and HDFC Bank in transaction banking, corporate and SMB banking roles across Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. Hani has been in Dubai for over 14 years and has worked extensively with SMEs for working capital finance in the Middle East region. He's passionate about moving trade finance to a new digital era and bridging the SME finance gaps. He's also a member of the executive committee of the ICC Banking Commission. Hani, we are all eager to hear from you. Manish Bhindra, again a known name. Manish Bhindra has over 20 years of rich work experience in IT operations, transformation projects, and business improvements. He's working as a group CIO for the Galadari Group, which has business operations in food and beverage, media, automobile, heavy equipment and engineering. Prior to joining Galadari Group, Mr. Bhindra has been associated with multinational organizations both in UAE and in India. He has worked with Al Dabagh, Al Nabuda Group in the capacity of Group CIO. In India, he has worked with Wipro, Tech Mahindra, and Siemens. He holds bachelor's degree in engineering from Pune University, and he's a double postgraduate in science and business administration, and has completed Global CIO program from Indian School of Business. His specialities include IT strategy and planning, IT risk management, IT governance, business process automation, program and project management. Manish, thank you for joining us today, and we are all ears for you.
Hi, everybody.
CA Mukund Jakia. Mukund Jakia is an assistant professor in the School of Management and Commerce at Amity University, Dubai. He has over 2 decades of experience in the industry and over 7 years of experience in academia. He is an associate chartered accountant 1992 batch from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. CA Mukund is a Bachelor of Commerce from Mumbai University. His research interest is in the field of retailers' adoption of mobile-based payment system, which looks like a future for us in UAE as well. Mukundji, it will be an honor for us to learn from the decades of experience you have acquired in the field of finance and accountancy. And now it is time I invite the person who will drive this discussion further, Mr. Vikas Panchal. Vikas is the business head for Tally Solutions Private Limited in Middle East. He completed his MBA and did a management program from IIMA, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He holds 20 plus years of comprehensive experience in channel development and direct sales in IT industry. Currently, as the business head for Middle East, he is largely responsible for building and leading MENA strategies to achieve Tally's dominance in the region. With this, I will take your leave. Over to you, Vikas.
Thank you, Priyesh, and welcome again, everyone. And thank you being a part of this initiative and taking your time out to come and share your experience and expertise with the SME community here. So let me start by asking panel members to share their views on what were the initial impacts of the lockdown and how has COVID-19 changed the way businesses are working. Let us start along with Mayank, if you can share your viewpoints on this.
Hi, Vikas, thank you so much for giving me the first opportunity to share my views. So I believe, in particular, I will focus on UAE as a matter of fact, since we are focusing on UAE SME industry. Now, UAE generally is a highly sentiment-driven market. I mean, we have seen that happening from 2008 onwards, when the Lehman crisis happened. Although the real impact on the economy in UAE was not that acute, but because of the panic button, because it's highly driven by sentiments, there was a much more acute recession, especially in the real estate sector in 2008 as well. So similar thing has happened now in case of COVID-19. Yes, we as a country, given the size of the population, we are not the worst affected countries by COVID-19, but we are hugely dependent on other countries in the world for our trade, travel, tourism industry. So the moment the lockdown process started in different parts of the world, the panic button did start, happening in UAE. And since most of the businesses are based on international trade to a great extent, so their business model was completely affected. And by and large, apart from the lockdown in UAE, since they were not getting their supplies or their customers were not placing the orders, so there was a major acute impact on the business resulting from the lockdown out of COVID-19. And some of the people or most of the people in the market have taken a very kind of a pessimistic view in terms of it's a doomsday. And I still would like to reassure, I believe there's always these phases will come in the economy. We have to live with it. It's not a doomsday. It was a phase which we have by and large passed by. And the businesses need to now resurrect themselves out and look forward to progressing on the future growth path as they had planned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's very rightly told. Anurag, would you want to share your views on the same?
My perspective towards the COVID situation that is there, but people are finding it much more interesting. A lot of businesses are there which trying to take the advantage of situation which is available. We come across a lot of businesses which believes that though the COVID situation is here, it hampers and slow down the economic activity within the region. But at the same time, it creates a lot of opportunities for people to really look into that way. Until now, they were managing their business, and what is the way they can effectively change to adapt to the new norms. Number one. Number two, the businesses have found a lot of opportunities which they can really look into that. Good people with exposure, they maintain their exposure. They find it pretty easy to sustain through because now it's a time for them to expand and to grow. So businesses have learned very good thing from this entire COVID is that they need to ensure their exposure is within the limit of their entire business. So overexposure is very unhealthy, and people are trying to take advantages situation of this entire COVID and finding new opportunities to expand. So we have seen a lot of businesses which is coming up for new acquisitions and mergers, which will gonna create and prosper economy further.
Oh, I think, I mean, that's a great news to hear. And I mean, this country is blessed that, is always looking at the growth aspirations and the business are always wanting to grow. Great, great. Fazila, you would want to share your viewpoints on the same, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I would say, here I'm the head of ACCA for the Middle East, and in the UK I had an accounting practice for SMEs. Now, looking at SMEs, what you can see is that the pandemic, the effects that it has been on both the supply and the demand side, right? So on the supply chains have been interrupted, that's led to like shortages, not getting goods in time, etc. But then you've also got the demand side. I mean, if you're thinking about restaurants, tourism, salons, different types of organizations have been impacted by people not going there because of the fear of the lockdown, etc. But what I do think is important is that SMEs have the advantages in that situations like this, they can be more agile and they can adapt to change quicker rather than a huge multinational or a large organization. And I think what's important is that SMEs have to come out of this challenging period stronger than ever. But maybe this lockdown has taught them skills and taught them, where they can cut their costs further, where they can become more, focus on digital. So I think it's about what are the SMEs seeing in this as an opportunity, and how have they got over each of the challenges? And I think that's what's important as a mindset.
Great. What I can interpret is that even in the current situation or the COVID situation, there are a lot of businesses which are on the growth aspect, right? There are a lot of segments which are still on the growing phase, and it's really interesting to know that businesses have actually utilized this time to enhance their skill set and introspect their business in a much better way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's different sectors, different industries, right? I mean, with the lockdown, what I heard in the UAE is a lot of people were spending time on doing their houses up, decorating, refurbishing, getting new things in. So, and that those companies and SMEs that I've seen in the Sharjah, Ajman region are doing quite well. And they're saying, oh my goodness, because of COVID, our business is doing really well. So, I mean, it's just seen differently for different sort of companies and organizations, right?
Yes, absolutely. Great. Honey, your viewpoints, please.
Yeah, Fazila has covered a lot of what is relevant from an industry perspective. But if we just expand the scope globally, we have seen international trade, because UAE is at the center of many trade crossroads. It is a very important segment of the economy here. So international trade between Jan and Feb suffered initially because of the situation in China, and we know that a large part of what imports pass through or re-exports happen out of UAE, they are directly linked to China's ability to supply. So that shock on the supply side was very evident in the first 3 months of the year. And as lockdown started happening in other parts of the world, including Middle East, the demand also became an issue. Domestic demand as well as logistics issues came into play. But one thing has been for sure, that UAE has, when it comes to trading, a very wide variety of industries which are contributing to the trading economy of UAE. So foodstuff, services, banking, these are affected. I think people very quickly adjusted to new way of doing things, whether it is a retail business which is very quickly moved online. I have family members who are into SME business in foodstuff, and we've seen at least 30-35 new businesses come up, or existing businesses move into online e-commerce in the first 45 days of the lockdown. So people have responded very quickly. But at the same time, we must acknowledge the unfortunate situation for many people who have ended up losing their jobs, and it is a very bad situation for many people. People who have traveled here and or traveled abroad are not able to come back. So I think we are fortunate in some sense that there are many industries which are doing well. But at the same time, I have in my thoughts people who are badly affected, and I hope for a quick recovery from this event.
Yeah, for sure. Professor Mukund, would you want to give your views on this?
Yes, most of the things are covered by my other panelists, but I just wanted to add, a few positive, lines that the current trend that we are seeing is going to be a V-shape recovery or a U-shape recovery, and soon things are going to become better than what it is now. Of course, new normal will be there. The impact of this COVID-19 will be there. The changes in technology is continuing to affect us in future in some favorable way. Like we can see a lot of online activities, businesses have started. So this is going to create a synergy of business. Like earlier, the traditional way of one-to-one business and online business, there will be a synergy. And when we will do business in future, there will be more efficiency, I feel. And that will, create a V-shape recovery, most likely in many economies. Thank you. Over to Vikas, sir.
Sorry, I lost. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, I'm not able to hear. Yes. Great. I think great to know the viewpoints of all the panelists. And if I may ask Mr. Mayank again, Mayank, we have been seeing news coming up with a lot of initiatives taken by the government. And if you can just throw some light on what are the various economic stimulus packages introduced in the UAE, and how do you feel that SMEs can benefit out of this?
Sure. So I think most of the countries in the world, they have supported the industry, or the government has tried to support the industry in their own different way of, coming out of the crisis. The main scenario or the challenge which the SME sectors has faced during any kind of a downturn is liquidity crisis. So that has been addressed by the UAE economy or the Central Bank of UAE by injecting additional liquidity specifically allocated for SME businesses. So there's a total liquidity of 100 billion dirhams, which has been announced as a stimulus package by the UAE Central Bank to be distributed. I mean, these are in two forms. There's a part which is a cash, actual cash, which has been given to the banks through the central bank, and other is by lowering the reserve ratios for the banks. A certain part of the reserves have been freed up, so that can be used for giving loans to SME sectors. Now, as a government or as a policymaker, they can only devise a macro level policy. The important part for SMEs to understand is how they're going to capitalize on something which is available. I mean, the incentives or the loan is not going to come to them at your doors, or they're not going to start coming and writing a check and giving to you. So you need to make an effort. Yes, there is a policy. There's 100 billion dirham of package, which is especially for SME sectors. But the process is you still have to go through the normal lending, apply for a loan, go through the credit checks and everything else. Yes, the banks have relaxed their norms. Normally, they were very strict in giving loans to SMEs. Now, as a part of the government's directives, the banks are taking a more lenient or a relaxed approach towards giving loans to SME sector per se. So that is the major incentive. Apart from that, there are a lot of incentives from different authorities in terms of announcing the reduction in the trade license renewal fees, reduction in the rent in the different free zone authorities. So there are a number of incentives at every level, like right from a free zone authorities to Ministry of Economy to Department of Economic Development, to lower the cost of operating the business, especially the government fees and levies have been reduced significantly during the period as an incentive to stimulate the businesses. They have also relaxed your Ministry of Labor norms. I mean, have allowed, I think the first time in the history of UAE, we have seen a unprecedented objective where they are saying you can actually move without going through from one company to another, or people can give employees to others on a temporary basis, so that the employment structure is retained. So I would say these are the three broad areas which will be covered as incentives. One is reduction in various government fees and levies. Second is a loan package for SMEs, and third is the flexibility of you being able to restructure your employment contracts with your employees, and even being able to give your employees, if they're not being fully utilized, to other companies on a temporary basis. So these are the important incentives which allow the SMEs the flexibility to be able to survive as well as grow once the economic recovery starts.
I think that's wonderful, Mayank. I'm sorry we have lost Vikas in between because of some technical glitch, but will not stop the discussion. I'll take over from here till Vikas joins us back. And sorry for the inconvenience for everyone. So on the similar lines, if I may ask, there are some initiatives that government has already taken, but anything specific that helped businesses or probably will help in future? Are there any comments that Anurag or Fazila you might want to add to this?
See, I would like to say that one of the greatest initiative of all time, that I probably must say that during the pandemic situation that came in, which is FDI. The government has allowed the FDI 100% foreign ownership that they have allowed. That is one of the great initiative of the government, and that really one of this stand that the government has taken to boost the economy, because people from outside the world, they're always concerned about the fact that will I get 100% ownership. So that is one of the really great initiative from a perspective of the government to boost the economy. Besides that, they've allowed all the people to stay in the UAE until December 31st. So in itself, that gives a lot of solidarity perspective from an UAE government, that they not only think about the business, they have flexed their norms to the best possible. At the same time, they're allowing people to defer their loans. One of the key things, as we all know, that liquidity is one of the critical things. So if you see that entire business is getting, businesses are getting flexibility to repay. I think there's some noise. 1 second. So essentially, what I'm trying to say that there exist a lot of possibilities in terms of people who can defer their loans, who can avail additional capital in terms of promoting their businesses and sustaining through the pandemic situation. And at the same time, governments have flexed their norms in terms of reducing the cost of operation. So cost of operation from a labor perspective, from a custom perspective. So custom also has come up. The custom department has also come up. They've reduced the custom duty by 1% on all the imports which have been sold locally. So at all the fronts, government's trying to promote the trade. They're trying to create a platform where all the people can synergize and take the benefit of this situation. So that together, it's all about UAE is all about togetherness. So the government is ready to listen. We are representing a lot of business groups to Department of Economy, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Finance, and whenever we have a discussion with respect to business, they are ready to listen. I mean, I represented a lot of groups there, and when we talk to Department of Economy or Ministry of Economy, they were ready to listen. Come and tell us your issues. We try to work it out. Whether it's a rental issue is there, whether it's DLD charges are there in terms of boosting the investment into real estate, whether it's all about taxation. Like for example, somebody was talking about VAT. People are ready to listen and try to accommodate the request wherever possible, looking into the both side of the benefit. So that kind of approach, if the government has, it not only promote the people who are trying to do the business, at the same time, it also promote other side of the party as well. So that kind of approach is very, very unique, and they're trying to look into the entire perspective of the business, so which is very healthy.
So I think I agree to that a lot, because if you look at the initiatives that government is rolling out, it's a lot, and I think government has spent enough efforts to spread awareness about that as well. Unfortunately, there are other mediums that are trying to like this particular event as well. The idea is to just spread awareness about what all businesses can take use of, how we can take advantage of those opportunities or incentives which government has offered. So I think there's a lot we can look at, and how our business can take benefit out of it. Fazila, any views about this? You want to contribute something?
No, I think my two fellow panelists covered most of it. But what is great to see is that governments globally have been going out of their way to support SMEs, understanding the benefits that SMEs do bring to an economy. I mean, if we look at Abu Dhabi Global Market, they announced 8 significant relief measures, on things like 100% waiver on commercial licenses, waivers on business activity renewal fees, on like refunds for supervision fees that were already paid. So that just shows that they do care, and they are looking out for SMEs, understanding the impact of that if they close down, what it will have on the economy. I mean, I think the Ministry of Human Resources launched various initiatives aimed at protecting both businesses and employers. And then a main one, speaking like a typical accountant, the FTA announced a deferment of March taxes to May, So looking at all these types of stuff, I mean, even free zones, they implemented key licensing initiatives. So all over, you can see that so much is being done in order to support the continuing of these SMEs, which I think it's fantastic.
Yes, totally agree. And I think Dubai is not the only player this time. But if you look at other Emirates, they are looking at the situation, equally aggressively, and they all are contributing the way they can the best. So with that, another thought that we have is about technology. So we see that, in case of MSME, we have experienced that certain businesses are very, very high on data securities. especially related to finance and customer info. So how do we encourage these SMEs to go online with the current situation? So Manish, you and Hani probably can please add some thoughts to it.
Sure, Priyesh. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. So, Priyesh, companies who think that their internal data centers are more secure than the online or cloud providers are, in my view, living in delusion. According to me, IT security is actually a moving goalpost. Every day there is a new threat, and one actually struggles to respond to that. SMEs in particular, they do not have enough money or internal skills required for constant upgradation of their systems, or even to conduct audits to understand what are the loopholes they have in their applications or infrastructure. Especially in UAE or in the region, we are seeing that they are increasing ransomware attacks now. I do not have right figures for UAE, but I know for US for certain, around 50% of SMEs have faced data breaches. While for cloud providers, there's no guarantee that they will not be attacked, but they have resources dedicatedly working on improving IT security, which is impossible for SMEs to do it internally. In fact, in recent years, we have seen that data breaches have been mostly on internal systems, not on cloud providers as such. So in my view, Priyesh, I would suggest that data security is actually a reason to move to cloud, not an obstacle at all.
And if I could add to that, Priyesh, he very nicely covered the data security issue. I think my fundamental concern about the SME sector is that it has underinvested in the IT infrastructure in the last few years compared to more sizable organizations. And possibly the simplest reason for that in UAE is that we are fundamentally a trading economy. For a trader, a phone, email, and a laptop is generally enough to make deals and grow the business. But at the same time, the moment you get into complexities of business, logistics, manufacturing concerns, services, etc., the appetite to the need for investment in IT infrastructure as well as the appetite should grow, which I do not see happening in the sector in this economy. So I think what this situation, COVID-19 situation, has done is that give everybody a wake-up call that you need to invest in not only your security infrastructure but overall infrastructure, which includes your customer interaction, which includes your operations, which includes your accounting and finance functions. Investing in all these areas and focusing on technology is very, very important. And later we will talk about how this has also helped the push for digital payments as well as trade finance in the economy.
Yes, for sure. I think so. One thing which we can conclude from this is that no matter how much has to be invested, and probably you don't really need to invest in millions, but there's definitely a need to invest in right IT infrastructure and probably go for smart solutions that you can afford, but make sure that you are on top of your business with that.
Yeah, take for example Zoom. How many of us use Zoom before March? How many
Yes,
of us had heard about it? And now this is the lifeline, right? We can't survive a day without Zoom, whether it is kids' education or our office work or calls like this. So many new solutions have come up and people are using it very quickly.
absolutely. Again, coming back to Manish, we would also want to know when it comes to IT infrastructure or the changes to respond to this COVID situation, what are the changes you have done at your end to make things better for your organization?
So, Priyesh, luckily we started quite early. I think by mid-Feb or end Feb, our systems were already ready for remote working because we were monitoring China's situation, and we felt that with Europe also COVID crisis increasing, we felt that this can hit us anytime. So we prepared earlier, and we had all our applications, all our systems ready for remote working as such. During the lockdown, especially, we started reprioritizing our projects. So we have now focused mostly on the projects which can bring new businesses or grow our business in the current scenario. To give you an example, now we have invested on e-commerce platforms and these projects were up and running in 4 to 6 weeks times. We also implemented systems where now customer can order through social media. We realized that most of our customer segment is teenagers or children who are usually engaged on social media. So we thought let's convert their interest on to a purchase right on the social media itself. We also signed a lot of contracts with these third-party aggregators to leverage on their supply chain, because we understood that in such a short time we cannot build our own supply chain. So why not piggyback on their supply chains as such? Another area which we looked at is obviously manpower optimization. So we were working on a robotic process automation program where bots can do simple, mundane, non-value adding activities and can free up human beings. So we actually worked on some bots. To give you an example, we worked on a bot which can process your Diva bills, Etisalat bills, your fuel bills, which are actually not required to be done by human beings. So we are able to free up some of our admin staff because of that. One positive out of COVID came is that we actually realized that some of our back office functions can actually work from home. So we said, why don't they work from their home country? So we are now thinking of having offshore delivery centers for our back office operations, where we can actually pay them reduced salaries, because the cost of living in those locations are much lesser compared to UAE, and get that cost benefit. So in a nutshell, we are focused on areas where we can grow businesses, where we can grow our business. And we have also looked at cost rationalization, but we have also kept in mind that our capability to do business or respond to our customer needs should not be affected in the long run.
That's very well done. I think optimization is key to success, or to continue with business continuity at least. And I'm sure if not exactly the same, but a lot of people will be able to adapt from this and probably apply this learning into their business as well. Thank you so much, Manish, for adding your inputs. And I think Vikas is back with us now. So I'll hand over the place to Vikas once again.
Thank you, Priyesh. And see, this is what technology does, is it gives you a snack in between. But yeah, great. I mean, good to hear again. So my next question is to Anurag. Anurag, I think one of the key concerns or challenges what SMEs are looking at is, managing their funds in the current situation. Although, with a lot of packages taking benefit of the stimulus package which the government is announcing. Apart from that, what do you feel, what are the ways that businesses should manage their capital and their cash flow so that they are able to sustain and grow in over a period of time? If you can just share your expert view on that.
That's a very good question, because actually, and I've seen a lot of businesses coming up and asking about this particular question, that how they can really sustain through this challenging time. So what we have advised to our people, and what we always see that working for a lot of people, is number one, understand and identify your fixed and variable cost. So many times, I mean, we've done a lot of business analysis for a lot of SME and small clients in past few periods. And surprisingly, they were not aware about what their fixed and variable costs are. So if you look into their fixed cost, which you cannot change, about your rentals, about your, the cost in relation to your employees, which is your fixed employee, and your liabilities in terms of the goods that you deal in. So effectively, what is most important at this point in time is to renegotiate the payment terms with your supplier. You should not default it. Everybody understands the situation at this point in time. So renegotiation with your suppliers is one of the key things. Second thing, you should limit your expenditure in terms of, whatever the expenses that you can really reduce, like for example, office rental. So if you don't need a bigger office, you can move to smaller office. You can look into the way you can negotiate the terms with your landlords in terms of having a flexible payment terms with them, because everybody is ready to listen and talk to, including DET today. They say that if you are finding it challenging to pay your license fee, you can request for an installment. So people can differ. So everybody is ready to differ at this point in time. So deferral, you should definitely ask to all the people, including your suppliers, governments, and wherever possible. Second thing, you should look into your staff. Everybody is, I always believe that employees are fundamental and core to the organization. Good time is there, bad time is there. Organization need to sustain through. So if we talk to our own staff, they can come up with and find out the means, what all things can be reduced at their level. So let's say, less electricity, less water, less office supplies. That can be one thing out of that. So they can bring down certain things. and more new ways to generate the sales. That is the best remedy at this point in time. But if you look into SMEs from a funding perspective, if we say that, look, you can go to the banks and try to identify and find out ways how you can avail the additional fund. That is not possible in today's term. Banks are not that much flexible to provide additional funding to the people. So whatever the funds that you have, you need to leverage by asking the existing people to expand the horizon of your payment, by which you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, no, I mean that's really a valuable feedback. I'm sure the lot of SMEs would definitely consider doing that. A lot of times people missed out on the fundamental aspects of it, and I'm sure the SMEs will definitely take up their advice.
Yeah.
Anurag, again coming back to you and just talking that now the easing of the lockdown. The government has, and today they have announced that it's fully operational now. What kind of recovery are you seeing in the business coming up now? So we were talking about the past, how people have coped in the last 2-3 months. But how do you foresee now that things are completely opened up? What is the pace and what sort of recovery are you looking at in the business?
See, businesses, there are certain segment. I mean, as Fazila said in the very beginning itself, there are certain segment. So we say travel, it's going to continue to be under the bottom level. Travel is going to be a situation like that. But sectors, I mean, hospitality is gradually picking up. So what people are trying to see, that I've seen the trend. We have a lot of the hospitality clients. So what we see the trend, people say that we are starting their properties one by one. So they're opening their hotels floor by floor by floor. So people from a smaller hotel going to the better hotel because the safety and other concerns are pretty right, and people finding it easy. Restaurant business is slowly picking up. It's not like they have picked up, but some of the restaurants start seeing the trend that people are going there, because if people has to live, then Dubai is open. Everybody is ready to go out.
Yes,
So
yes.
every segment is gradually opening it up, but there is a lot of opportunities for segments like insurance. They're finding it a lot much because people are much more aware. They're trying to find out technology driven companies. People are ready to listen, ready to talk to. However, one thing that many technology companies do not really understand, that how I gonna meet the need of a SME. So SME does not have immediate cash to give it to them. And often, let's say solutions. I mean, when we look into the solution like Tally, it's affordable. It's much more affordable to the people. It meets the instant demand and need of the people. Likewise, if we talk about much more transformation ways, like a product like Tally. So if you can bring certain things to meet the demand of the SME sector, that's where you can encash about that. So technology is one side of things. Then about professional firms. Today, professional firms, people are much more going to them and trying to understand how a professional advice can help them to better to enhance their business model. Then comes the trade, whatever the trade see need of our, I need to wear the cloth, I need to buy a cloth. Whether
Yes.
I'm spending more time at home, so I need to spend much more money to refurnish my home. So some of our client, which is into the home furnishing, they say, look, the lockdown was extremely good for us because people could not buy the cloths. So what they do is they never change their mattress, they never change their bed, they didn't require a desk and chair to sit at home. They spend in that. People spend significant amount of money and they grow. Now, if you look into the textile and fashion, people are going back. Whatever they did not spend in the last couple of months, at least half of that they're going to spend it. Only thing is, what will going to remain challenging for next couple of 6 months is the luxury. So people will avoid luxury, but basic needs, moderate needs, they're going to continue, and the economy will going to revive. So it's not that 3 months lost from the people's all life. Whatever the money saved in those 3 months is going to come, at least some portion of it. So I see the good.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. I mean, that was one of my next question to Mayank. And as you rightly put across, out of adversity comes opportunity. And we're seeing that with the current pandemic prevailed, we have witnessed a lot of new startups have mushroomed, right?
Yep.
And they are emerging from everywhere and they're trying to convert this crisis into opportunity. Can if you can throw some further light on what Anurag was also mentioning, then what are those sort of startups, and how are they wanting to scale it up in the near future? And what are the learnings for them that they should take about in this, since they're starting in this situation?
Sure. So I think, because that's a thing which is very close to my heart, because a lot of work we as a consulting firm, which we have done over the course of last 4 months or so, is primarily what we call as a corporate restructuring. We have a lot of SMEs in particular, because they have more flexibility, more agility to change their business model, who have been, based on the professional advice and with the help of people around them, have taken the initiative to diversify their business. And I always tell, when we're doing corporate restructuring, it's not always about just looking at rationalizing the cost and cutting the cost. When we talk about corporate restructuring as a consultant, when we do that work, we always look for alternative forms of revenue. And what we have seen, traditional businesses, they have realized that a brick and mortar model, even if you're traditionally you are very successful in that, COVID-19 has taught them, this is the first time it has happened, something like this, but there is no guarantee it will not happen again in future. It might be something else a year, 2 years down the line. So people are taking a future that they cannot realize just on a brick and mortar model. Even in their core model, they are taking their products to a digital platform. They're converting, or they have that was the need of the hour, and that's why I say the crisis brought the opportunity, and they're realizing the benefits from that. Can we work on for restaurants? Do I really need a full-fledged restaurant within all the operating costs, or whether a delivery model is more efficient for me? I'm making more money in a delivery model. I can invest into technology. I can create my own app. I don't need a Zomato. I can be a new app developer, or I can have my own thing. Similarly, we have seen that in other businesses, including like retail, electronics. Everybody has started going into their technology, has become the need of the hour, which has given the opportunity to the startups at the same point of time. That the start, like, okay, the businessman or the entrepreneur who has existing business, he has a market, he has a demand. Now he needs somebody to give him the technological solution. The traditional large companies, as would be pretty expensive. They will be, SMEs can't afford them. But there are a lot of startup entrepreneurs who have developed good product. They have a proof of product which is already done. They don't have the scale of market which a larger product would have. And established products also, like companies like Tally and others, they're giving those affordable solutions, right? You can, and what is happening is the businesses are realizing one factor, that okay, even if I want to downsize as part of restructuring, what I should focus on, whom I should, if I have to lay off employees as a need of the hour, I should not lay off employees who are core to my business, but I can lay off employees and outsource my non-core functions, such as accounting and bookkeeping, such as taxation advisory, such as your IT services, digital marketing, social media marketing. Maybe these people, I can still get a better value at a lower cost and a more expertise, because consultants or advisors like us will come with a larger diversified expertise. So that is what we are seeing, as an overall thing, and which is giving the opportunity to, technology is the hard core of it. I also see a lot of developments happening in the healthcare space. A lot of companies, have started, manufacturing products such as masks, such as sanitizers and stuff like that. And something like a mask can be produced at a very small scale. You don't need a massive setup. It has a demand for it. So that has given, people ideas, and people are coming with new, ideas in the things which have actually grown during this period. And I would see, even going forward, healthcare, technology, and some other sectors, even education becoming online. That is becoming a norm. Like, a lot of schools are actually starting an online. Like GEMS recently announced that they will be starting a school which is purely an online school. So now we're looking at traditional models being changed into a different model. So that's I think the way forward, and that's when we say the new norm of doing business, and we all have to adapt. And it's important that SMEs who have not adapted till now, they start thinking on those lines, take the professional help where required, so that they are able to move with the changing times.
Yeah, great. I mean, so all of us are agreeing that the key strength with the SME holds is the agility and the speed with what they can adapt. And we have seen that the businesses who are doing that, are able to succeed in the current situation as well, right?
Yes.
And Fazila, if I may ask, as we mentioned that in the current situation, it's influencing both the suppliers and the buyers to move online. And do you feel that there are some special considerations those they should consider while moving into the new way of operations?
Well, I do think it's the digital age that we're in right now. And I think those days are gone where you can even joke about being a dinosaur with technology. I do think there is a sphere and there is a possibility for suppliers and buyers to move online into this sort of digital age that we're in. And I do think that is an area that needs to be further explored. And the benefit is that SMEs, as we've said, are agile. and can adapt easily. And so they need to look into other sort of forms of technology that is going to help them reduce costs, become more efficient, optimization, and get the outcome and the result that they want by going via not such a long route, wounded route, but also an efficient route.
Yeah, great. I mean, so great. I mean, Honey, bringing me back again to you, taking the link from here, that when everything is moving digital, how is that leading to the change of behavior of SMEs? And I mean, what do you feel that would be the payment trends for the trade and the SMEs now that things have started changing?
So we clearly seen, right? People don't want to touch anything that comes inside their house. They want people to leave it at the door without touching anything, right? So contactless is the way. So same thing goes for payments. Nobody wants to handle cash anymore. Nobody wants to touch credit card machines and punch in the pin. People want to use as much contactless payment method as it is possible. Now, which is forced. But the beauty about these things is that once I started using Apple Pay 3-4 years ago, it came. I hate to even take out my wallet and give the credit card. It just makes you lazy as well as it is very efficient. So that's going to happen at a mass scale now when it comes to consumer behavior, when it comes to SME behavior. We have this disease of issuing millions of checks in the UAE. I see that trend changing when people accepting a bank transfer as a acceptable way of collecting payment. I clearly see. Back in February, we were at a conference and I asked about 4 banks on the panel in UAE, what is your percentage of online transaction requests for trade finance? And the numbers were in the range of 10 to 15%. In the last 1 month, the same banks are reporting upwards of 60% client interaction online, because you can't go to a branch. But the long-term effect of this is that a lot of these clients will continue to use online banking for their trade finance needs as well. And trade finance especially is an area where we still have large amount of paper being used globally, whether it is in Middle East, Asia, Africa, Europe. No matter where you go, trade finance is possibly lagging behind the payments industry when it comes to use of digital, which is also moving much faster. We heard the news last week that in India, customs will start accepting electronic bill of lading and they will phase out paper. That's a massive news for the trade finance industry, and that's likely to lead more and more regulators as well as customs authorities in other markets in Asia as well as other parts of the world, including UAE, to adopt digital, and that will make it more efficient. And as it becomes more efficient, trade finance becomes cheaper, easy to avail. There is less risk of fraud. It's easier for SMEs to borrow from banks. I know that's easier said than done in our market, especially. But still, if banks see less risk in dealing with paper, less risk in dealing with SMEs from a fraud perspective or operational error perspective, it becomes easier, that much easier for banks to lend to more people and at a lower cost. So these trends, I believe, are started because of a problem, but they will be here to stay.
Okay, great. I mean, great. I mean, just to add on to and to ask you further, would you feel that we've seen a lot of small and medium enterprise MSMEs, very comfortable handling cash in the previous scenario, right? But do you feel that they will also move towards this cashless transactions, or would it only be for a period of time, or would it be a long-term aspect now? So it is a new way.
We need to understand why people were not comfortable moving to non-cash methods. I think the number one reason is cost, because there is a cost attached to whether you use a card, accept a card or online payment or a payment link, website, portal. So there is cost attached to it. So that's number one reason. Number two, there is this comfort in cash that I have got it in my hand and it's mine. It's not going anywhere. There's no fraud happening there. But there is cost associated to handling cash and transporting cash. It may be invisible, but it is there. So I think that inertia, that ice has been broken with this COVID-19 situation. A lot of businesses which were cash on delivery are happy taking card on delivery or an online payment. And in general, the acceptance of digital methods of accepting instructions, accepting payments, accepting contracts, digital signatures, all these technology-driven methods of doing business, which people were comfortable doing on paper, for example, are likely to change, because once you use it, you realize the efficiency and the effectiveness of these methods. These are not new technologies; these have been there forever. I come back to this call. In just 6 months ago, we would have possibly sitting on a forum somewhere and 100 people in the room, and half of them on their phones, not even paying attention because that was the norm. Zoom calls are going to be a norm. Everybody's comfortable with Zoom calls. My 5-year-old kids in the house say, "Can I do a Zoom call with my friend?" And then they're gone for an hour, which is a new norm for us as parents. Also, we accept that. Similar theory applies to business. Once you get used to something which is more efficient, you're not likely to go back.
So it's going to become a habit for everybody, and the
It's a
new
matter of
norms.
habit.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, great. And that brings to the another question for Professor Mukund, who has a special interest in this. I mean, as Hani told that Apple Pay and mobile payments. How do you see the immediate future for mobile payments happening in the country?
Well, UAE consumers are becoming more cashless, and the trust in digital payment is increasing. We can look at current trends. There was one recent survey 2 days back in newspapers. There, we understand that there is some game-changing shift has happened in the payment behavior in UAE after COVID-19 outbreak. The digital payments have gone up substantially. Those who are making payments up to 71%, it has gone up, and it is going to continue and going to become a new normal. That is also mentioned in the survey. Why that is happening? There are main 4 reasons in change in behavior of the customer or consumer. The first and foremost is security, speed, convenience, and limited human intervention, as my previous panelist has already covered. So this change in behavior is going to certainly support the growth of the business of SMEs. And in view of the above, we can say that immediate future of mobile payment in UAE is certainly looking very optimistic. Thank you. Over to
Great. I mean, out of the entire discussion, what I assume is that automating their business and bringing automation would be a very important key for all the SMEs, and that is where they will they will be able to hook onto e-commerce or hook onto the digital way of payment structure or everything. So, Mayank, if you can just tell me that what is the attitude of businesses in buying or upgrading the software? What are the key things they should look at in automating their business?
I think the major challenge with SME is a perception issue. Like the SMEs generally believe that technology is very expensive. So the reason, I mean, it's not, generally they're not, the concept is, okay, only the big sector, the perception, that's not the reality. That only the large sector is too expensive. I don't have 100,000 dirhams or $100,000 to spend to invest into technology. So I have to keep on, sustaining on a manual way of working and everything. So what is important is, the technology service providers, they reach out to SMEs on, a more effective basis, right? Really to tell, like, because there are a lot of affordable products for every solution, I mean, which can be automated. There are a lot of bots which are being developed by a number of companies, which are quite effective, which can replace, for example, the need for a personal secretary, and who can actually, the bot can do all the work typically a secretary does. And you really, that's much more cost effective tool for you from that perspective. It's just the exposure which the SMEs need, because as part of the cost restructuring and everything, automation is one of the things. If you have to replace people, and if that's the need of the hour, your manpower or payroll cost is too high, you still need the business to go on. So how do you really keep the business going and still save on the cost? So technology becomes useful. And what I would say for all our SME sector clients which are out there, let's not go by the perception. It's worthwhile evaluating, depending on what your budgets are, what are the technology options to give you the solutions you're looking at. So if I believe it's available at affordable cost, most of the SMEs would be, as long as SMEs understand a basic concept, cost benefit analysis. That's how I, advise all our SME clients. Okay, this is the cost you're spending. What is the benefit you're getting it? How this cost is going to be returned? As long as the technology providers, they're able to explain them the cost and benefit, concept in a clear way, and they are able to understand it's within the budget, I believe the SMEs would have propensity to actually go for technology. And that's more like, I would think a lot of effort should be made to create that awareness amongst the SME sectors, because I believe they really need technology to move to the next phase. If they have to become a large corporate, if they keep on doing the work they have, the way they're doing, they may stay as SMEs. ultimately every SME entrepreneur, when we discuss with them, they have a dream of becoming large. Nobody wants to stay as SME. Everybody starts as SME, but they want to become large. And I believe to become large, technology is your footstep you have to use as a basis.
So if I may summarize, I mean, it's more to a matter of a mindset where SMEs should start thinking about automating. And I'm sure with whatever budgets they have, there's always a solution available in their budget. And they can always
Important part is somebody, and in addition to the product available, they need proper set of advisors who can actually know how to use or implement the technology effectively. Because there are a lot of products available, but how to use for your business effectively, that's also the key. So I think it's a combination of effective use of the technology rather than just selling a product. You have to be selling it, I believe, along with the implementation plan coming along with it. That's what will help. Okay, we are not just giving you a product, we will also help you in implementing the product so it is actually of a use to you rather than you just buying it and keeping it in the shelf. So I think that's the key, which as long as the technology providers are able to bring and combine that solution of bringing implementation advisors or advisors who can actually work with them to convince the SMEs or practically how the technology is going to be used, the SMEs will be more inclined to use the technology than what they currently are.
Great. I mean, that is where companies like Tally would definitely be playing a vital role, and we've been doing a lot of events for educating the SMEs, and you guys all definitely
Yes,
part of
yes.
it. Yeah, and then great. I mean, I would want to open a question for all the panel members. Looking at the current situation, how do you feel? When do you feel that the economy would come back to the normal situation? And when I say normal, how do we now define the new normal for the MSME segment? I mean, if you can, Fazila can start along, and we can take
I'm
turns.
smiling because everyone talks about this normal. Yeah, and I think it is. And then with this buzzword, new normal, I think people are gonna. It all depends on this virus, right? When is it going to be safe to go out? Is it safe to go out? Are people confident to go out? And it depends a lot on people, right? But I think slowly and surely, it's going to take time. I don't have a crystal ball, but I know in my mind I've sort of said January 2021 is probably going to be the start of when things will go back into full operation. But I don't deal with so many SMEs like the rest of my fellow colleagues and panelists. So again, it all depends. Things are opening up, but as somebody mentioned earlier, it's not like the revenues lost in 3 months are going to be made up, but it's not that it's all been lost either. So I think it's just interesting times, and we have to be positive, and we have to look at the opportunities, and SMEs really do need to spend this time thinking about the future and what the future will hold. So I look forward to hearing what the other panelists are going to say on that.
Great. Anurag, would you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can say one thing to all the SMEs. But first of all, a lot of time this question comes in, even at home, even the TV or in the newspaper, every time, when the economy will gonna, come to again the stand it was before. See, if you see that one of the greatest example in recent time, that if you see in India, one business itself made itself debt free in the COVID situation. Nearly $16 billion they can make. They made, right? So I think it's all new normal. Opportunities are immense everywhere. This is a new normal now. Business are open. You think that even the virus vaccine has come up. It'll gonna take year and a half probably to reach out to the people. In
Yes.
that time frame, 1.5 years, I mean 18 months from now, by the time medicine will be available, you think the world is normal. Everybody adopted the norm that we need to wear the mask. I mean, I have the mask as well, which is like a washable mask. My wife is buying like for me a designer mask because she says like why you go out and you wear your fancy suits, why don't you have a mask matching it? E-commerce, yeah, I mean, you see e-commerce, it's growing like anything. It's growing business. So people have education will continue, right? I mean, I always see that education you cannot stop.
Yes.
Food you cannot stop. You have to have 4-time meals, right? You need to wear the clothes, whether outside or inside. So maybe at home you need flexible clothes. You need to have a car. You need to go and meet out to friends. Maybe the quantity will gonna slightly reduce, but it will gonna go. Electronic payments are increasing everywhere. So economy is in itself its own shape. I mean, whoever we are talking, they say, look, we don't have an issue with the business. Business is normal. I mean, Dubai is a logistic hub. Most of the people from here, what they do trade outside. So they trade in Africa, Russia, and different jurisdictions. Their trade is still happening from China to Russia. Maybe there's a little bit of delay in terms of things, but it's happening. It's happening.
Great.
Only segment that I see which a challenge is travel and leisure and the what do you call that costly item, any fashion related thing. So there is slightly impact and it's going to continue for a while, but other things are going to continue. Automobiles, people are now coming up. I mean, this was one of the segment which I watched very carefully. So the people which are not buying the cars now, they're trying to go and try to find out, because it's no more safe. People say no more safe and no more healthy to travel public transport. So why shouldn't I take a license and shouldn't buy a car, even a smaller? So every segment has going to get some sort of benefit because of certain reasons. So it's a new normal, and I think economy is progressing from here. There is no downwards. Whatever has happened, but from here it's picking up. So it's a time for everybody to look into that.
Absolutely. So I think the new normal is adaptability. The faster you adapt to things and the faster business adapts to changes, I mean, they're back on track. Honey, you would want to add anything on this?
Yeah, so we need to look at the genesis of this slowdown, right? Mayank opened with this, saying that there is a sentimental issue and there is a real issue of shutdown of the economy. So I think with economy opening up, public transportation opening up, despite social distancing, I see large number of sectors coming back to normal, albeit slowly by the end of the year. But the new normal also means that there will be more conscious choices being made when it comes to cost. Someone in the comment section said it's not easy to invest in technology in today's environment when we're trying to downsize, cut cost, receivables are not getting realized, banks are not growing limits. So where do you find money to invest? So I think that is the realistic assessment of ability to grow business. There will be opportunities. Many people are taking benefit of those opportunities. It's going to be difficult, but I see most parts of economy coming back to normal in the next 6 to 8 months, provided what Fazila said, the virus doesn't misbehave again. Because another reality is that in March and April, the size of coronavirus impact was very small, but the fear factor was very big. Now the small size of the impact of coronavirus is much larger, but the fear factor has actually gone down. The sentiment is not so negative about what happens if someone contracts coronavirus. We are a country of young population. We don't have the situation of Italy and France, where there's a large population above 60 years of age. So our economy, being a young economy, entrepreneur driven economy, people making use of the opportunities in the time of adversity, I see us bouncing back faster than many parts of the world. Yeah, but our fate is linked to the rest of the world, so that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Mayank, any final thoughts?
Yeah. So I just would say, I mean, as far as UAE is concerned, when we look inward, I mean, as Hani mentioned, that the mortality rate in UAE is not as high as other countries. Although we might have close to 46,000 infected cases, the number of deaths are only 300. So that fear factor which was there, it is that way that we can't just move out of the house. That fear factor has gone. So people have started venturing out. But to the extent possible, I think when we say the new norm of the business is face-to-face meetings and stuff will be only left when it's really required. So in last 3 or 4 months, everybody has realized you can still do business without meeting face-to-face. There are all kind of technological tools available. The business, whatsoever you achieve by a face-to-face meeting can still be achieved, including the first time in life, a lot of salespeople who have actually been used to a face-to-face selling as the only mean, they have achieved significant sales target by using technology as a mean of selling. So that's the new norm of business. I mean, for the salesperson here to reinvent, the business development marketing team, every strategy has to reinvent itself because the old strategies are not. So that's what everybody has adapted themselves to. And I believe that's what business is. You need to be adapting to the new times. I still believe even after the COVID-19 situation is over, and, we still believe once people start getting, used to the new norm of, doing the business technically by using more technological, by using, other means than face-to-face meeting, that will become a part of the business practice itself. So, and online learning in terms of education sector, in healthcare sector, we have a lot of healthcare clients. Now, the first time they have experienced something called telehealth consulting. That's the division they have opened. So you're giving consulting as healthcare practice over the phone. But that's going to become a norm going forward, even after the COVID-19 situation goes off. Because people are realizing, okay, this is, as a business, it's much more profitable for me, in terms of my total staff and everything. So I open it as a full-time division, although I started as an experimentation. So that's what is happening with all the businesses. I believe when we say the new norm, we actually are seeing moving into a new era of traditional way of doing businesses will change. Of course, some forms will continue, but parallelly we have a new norm of doing business, which is through digital and electronic means. And my own view is that is going to continue even when the COVID-19 situation becomes normal, because by that time people would have already got used and be comfortable with doing business in that particular way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and the amount of efficiency increment what they will see by saving the time in travel and spending time on in the wait list and everything. I'm sure the SMEs would definitely be get hooked onto this digital way of operations.
Yeah, just taking the example lead from Tata Consulting Services, which had even post COVID-19, 75% of staff in India are actually going to work from home. A lot
Yes.
of consulting firms and other IT, they've actually gone that to make up, because what we have realized, even in a city like UAE, people are having offices in Dubai, but staff is coming living in Sharjah. You save on minimum of 4 hours of traveling time, which becomes a productive time for the people if they're able to work efficiently from home. So what's the
Absolutely.
traveling all the way from Sharjah to Dubai? You can actually, as a company, you can save of not paying them the transport allowance. That's what the transport allowance. So you actually can reduce your cost. You can reduce your office cost because you still have the business going, but you don't need enough office space to accommodate that many people. So that's slowly we are seeing a lot of companies actually, like the way it used to happen in the West. The work from home is going to become, like, for a certain portion of the staff, is going to become a permanent solution, because the efficiencies and synergies which are coming from that are going to be having a long-term benefit than just a COVID-19 benefit.
Yeah, and becomes a win-win for everybody. Even the employee is happy not traveling for 2 hours and sitting at the comfort of his house and doing his work. Great. I mean, yeah, excellent. Great, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your great insights and taking your time out again. And I'm sure all the participants would have definitely benefited out of it. And with this, I would want to hand it over to Priyesh to see if we are able to take up any Q&A further. Priyesh?
Yes, thank you, Vikas, for driving this discussion. A big thank you to all our panel members for sharing their views and guiding us all through this difficult time. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder for all, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in your control panel. We'll give quick 10 minutes here and pick up some questions that we have received in the question answer section. And for the benefit of the panel, I will read out these questions and anyone from the panel can come forward to answer it for our audience. So here we go. I have taken down some of the questions from the question answer section. So the first question was from Aniruddha. I hear from the trade credit insurer that they have increased the credit risk of Middle East and mainly UAE. As a result, credit terms will tighten in near future. Any comments?
I think I did reply to Aniruddha on the chat box as well. That is correct. That going forward, as far as the credit insurance is only a one part of the, what he's referring to. So all credit terms are not fully insured. Like, credit insurance is only one segment of the credit. Like, those terms are being tightened and there will be pressures on that. But on overall front, at least for this year, in the, objective of the government to support the corporate and the SME sector, I believe the credit norms will be relatively more relaxed. I'm not saying everybody is going to get loans. You still have to, tick the 3 C's of, which is the credit, covenant, and character, which is the basic of getting a loan. But as compared to what was happening for the last 2 or 3 years, where banks had taken a complete position that they will not lend at all to SME sector, at least this year, or they were reducing the limits from, their existing limits. So there is some relative level of relaxation to help the SME sector to revive. So this year, I think the SME sectors, whosoever is qualified to achieve or take the benefit of that, the options should be able to take it. Going forward in the longer run, I agree the credit terms are going to become tighter and tighter as we go along in the economy in the next few years, I would say. So that's a long-term outlook. He's right on that.
All right. Thank you, Mayank, for helping us with this question. And I see there is one question which has come from Surinder. The question reads like this: any particular incentive announced by government for small traders or small importers?
So I think there is specific the general incentives which we discussed in the as part of incentive packages. They all apply specifically to all the companies, including small traders and importers. Yes, but I believe there is installment plans for paying your license fee. You have a flexible rent and deferrals in all the rental payments and all those other things. So those are specific. I will say everything which is targeted by and large. SMEs are more benefited because just look at a license fee or a government levy. A large corporate for paying a 10 or 15 or 20,000 dirhams as a license fee, that's hardly a negligible cost in their P&L. Whereas for SME, it could still be a substantial cost. So the actual beneficiaries of all these, the reduction in the levies and everything and the government fees and the deferral will be SMEs, although the option is available to all the companies by and large. But the real beneficiaries, I believe, will be SMEs because for them, the impact of this small little support which the government or other authorities are giving is much more bigger than what is it for a large corporate.
See, I want to add something to that. I mean, I always say that a lot of people come and ask the question that will the bank flags their norms in terms of the credit? But before asking this entire question to anybody or even going to the bank, just think about your business. The bank is also a sort of doing the business. They will lend the money to a business where they see the confidence. If your business does not have a right profile, do you think put yourself as a banker and try to think will you gonna fund into your own self? No. Or probably yes. Before going to the bank, it's very important that you need to understand that what kind of profile you do have before going to any sort of credit, alternate credit as well available. So you need to create your profile, you need to define your projections, right? You need to look into your own self in 1 year from now, effectively 12 months, and you see that if your business sustain through, I mean, you were not having access to the credit before. Now, because the pandemic situation came in, will you be able to have the access now? So banks were is still tight. I mean, there is no change in the banking norm until now. I mean, in this time frame, bank was not providing that much liquidity to the lot of SMEs in last couple of years. So they did not change their stand. They did not stick their norms. I mean, the norms remain the same. If you are able to avail the credit is still there. They did not reduce your facilities because of COVID. No.
Yeah, if I could add to that, one more thing is that sometimes the question is a bit misguided because the banks will not start lending suddenly to you if central bank has given extra liquidity or there is a COVID-19 situation and everybody feels obliged to help the SME sector. It is actually what you did in the last 2 or 3 years to maintain your books, to invest in your infrastructure, to create management capability, to show transparency and good planning. What you did in the last 3 years is actually what really gets you the bank finance. It is not the current situation or what you will do in the next 1 or 2 months. But at the same time, what you do today will make you bank worthy in the next 2 to 3 years. So it is never too late to invest in a good accounting system, and I'm not advertising for Tally, but but investing in the right infrastructure to be able to discuss this with confidence with banks. Going back to Anurag's point, what have you done or what will you lend to yourself in this situation? You'll be able to answer the question if there is right level of investment in the right areas of the business, including record keeping and better counts.
So that's what precisely we are seeing even practically, I believe, like when, only the companies which are actually ticking the boxes of the 3Cs, they are able to get, okay, somebody's limits were reduced from, let's say, 20 million dirham to 10 million dirhams because that was a standard blanket reduction done a few years back by all the banks. But now, because of the thing that they have done their business, they've been able to sustain it well on their own, even with a reduced limit. And the banks, when they have gone to the banks, okay, now we want to increase it, taking benefit of this package from 10 million to 12 million or 15 million, for example, the banks are more reciprocal to those kind of businesses in, using this package. So the banks
Right.
are yes, the package is there for banks to deploy, but the banks are not going to give it to everyone. So you have to be meeting the criteria. And as Hani said, there, what you have done over the period, like the limits have been reduced by and large on a blanket basis 2 or 3 years back for SMEs. So what you have done to sustain or how you have, carried out your business over last 2 to 3 years, that's going to define whether you will be eligible to get the credit now or not.
I think those are very valid points, and we need to, as an SME business owner, you need to always look into these details first of all before we actually put a question where we are going to get credits from or the funds from. Again, there's one question from Helen Deiki. Helen has again asked a similar question, which is how does one push to get these credit facilities? I hope we have already answered your question, Helen. If not, then please you can again type in the questions more specifically if there's something else you want to know. Then we have a question from Aniruddha. Because banks are unsure about how the economy is going to shape. Okay, that's not a question actually, that's a comment on your statement. Thank you so much, Aniruddha. You believe in the thoughts that we have shared. Then we have a question from Tejendra Somani. How ESR is going to impact SME sectors? And are we expecting the 100% ownership? Because for SME, normally the sponsors don't give powers to the owners to create their banking facilities.
See, with respect to economic substance regulation, this regulation is with respect to the direct taxes. If you have the foreign relationship, and because of that foreign relationship, you have established certain structures which result in harmful tax practices, that's where you're going to fall into the ESR. So ESR will going to bring more transparency into the economy. Number one, it will going to take out all the shell entities which is operating and trying to route the money. So it's a routing of the money to evade the tax in different jurisdictions. So what it's going to do is it will going to bring more transparency. When the transparency is here, you see the businesses which is genuine, they're going to really progress. I mean, what the VAT has done to businesses. A lot of people say that VAT is like a cost. Ultimately, we all are paying the VAT, not the businesses. So retail or constructions, I mean retail sector, retail which is like into the cash, FMCG, and these e-commerce companies, they are accumulating a lot short of cash. The 5% which is there. To some companies, it's 115 days. And to some company, it's 58 days. So you have this 5% holding along with you for 58 or 115 days. Imagine what you can do with this. Whereas the small businesses which have the credit problems, like, they have extended credit terms to sustain their businesses, very, very small. That's where the challenge comes in. But good business model will sustain those. So is the ESR. It's a kind of governance which allow you to have right set of practices, do your business right, treat your customers and suppliers and your parties outside right way, provide the information. So there's genuine business activity which is going to happen, and it will gonna really, really push the economy forward. Only thing is that there will be a little bit of side effect because of the other businesses which were happening in the UAE. They will have to find another shelter, because going forward from here, it's only good governance organization will gonna sustain.
I would just
Thank you so much.
Perspective creation on ESR. I mean, just from the concept of, people believe that ESR generally will be detrimental to the businesses in UAE, because they were completely operating in an unregulated environment for almost like 40 years. There was no regulations around, by and large, people were free to do whatsoever they want to do, that's effectively. So now slowly we are moving, because of we being internationally well connected, we're moving into a regulated environment. But when we say regulated environment, that does not stop you from doing your business. If you are doing a business which is, actually based in UAE, you don't have any potential, relationships where a tax evasion or harmful tax practices can happen. ESR is not going to affect you. Yeah, there are notification norms, there's returns norms. These are just, compliance requirements you have to undergo. But on the longer run, we believe that ESR will have a more positive impact for UAE, economy, because ESR is not just applicable on UAE. It has been applied in all the tax-free jurisdictions, which were there, like BVI, Cayman Island. Now, these kind of island, jurisdictions which were tax-free, they don't have, where it's very difficult to prove economic substance, because by and large, you have a shell company, you can never prove easily an economic substance. Whereas in UAE, you have an actual operating country, so there is a lot of re-domiciliation of the companies, foreign companies, which we have seen a lot of requests coming in. For they wanting to re-domicile into UAE effectively, because they were operating out of BVI or Cayman or anything, So they are now wanting to set up in UAE, because here they can have employees, they can have office and everything in place, and people are comfortable living and working in UAE. So in the longer run, the ESR, because it's applicable in all the tax-free countries, so UAE has a more competitive edge in terms of drawing more companies or re-domiciling those companies into UAE. And the existing companies in UAE, I don't, as long as they just follow the certain practices, and even if you look at what the economic substance regulations are saying, that you should have the minutes of the meeting, your board resolutions should be documented, you should have adequate infrastructure for running your business, and you should have enough employees. They're talking of very basic things. They're talking about basic fundamentals of business. They're not really going out of the norm about that. So if the businesses really understand the ESR properly, I don't think there's anything to be taking it in a negative light. And in the longer run, for the UAE economy as a whole, we are actually in an advantage position as compared to the other tax-free jurisdictions. So it would have a more positive impact on us.
Thank you so much, Mayank. This was a great insight. And I think we are getting a lot of questions around ESR. What I would want to announce here to all the audience, if there are questions about ESR, and I understand that there's a deadline for ESR on 30th of June, we are hosting one more webinar, which is dedicated for ESR, which is on 27th of June. You can always go to our official website, that is tallysolutions.com. And on the webinars page, you will be able to register yourself for an ESR webinar as well. If you want, probably towards the end of the session, I will be able to take you through my website and the section where you can register for ESR webinar. So I'll not take more questions on ESR, and with this limited time, I think we'll have to wrap up now. One last question I can just go ahead with, so that I don't disappoint my audience here. Okay, so there's Naeem Khan who's referring to Mr. Mayank that what are the steps and precautions to take SME survive in this situation to avoid losses in business, and is it good time to take trade finance? So I think we can answer this trade finance part.
Yeah, I think, see, as far as this, on a simple basis, whatsoever is the basics which is applying for you as an individual, you have to apply on the same business. Your cash is going to be tight. The liquidity is going to be tough for the foreseeable future. So you have to use, as SME business, your cash judiciously. Cash is king in today's environment. You have to invest and deploy it in the right assets. You can't just, go and, for example, on an overdrive expansion mode. There are a lot of distressed opportunities. If you are sitting on cash, a lot of businesses which are distressed, but which have a good value proposition are available for acquisition. A lot of good assets are available for acquisition, as well as, but your own business model. When you are looking at your own business, you have to be careful in which segments you want to focus on. You have to see how the trends are changing, because what was successful for you over the years may not be successful in the future. So you need to revisit your business model. You need to look at diversification if your existing business model is not going to work in future. And if you have got cash, I would say there are good opportunities which you can actually invest on. And coming down to trade finance, it's a matter of, if you have an opportunity, I always say use finance only when you can actually have the opportunity to use it, so that you make profits and you can return it back to the financer as well. So if you have the business opportunity where you can use trade finance and capitalize on it and be able to make profits for yourself, as well as able to repay back the banks for whatsoever you have taken, then you should go for trade finance. Don't go for trade finance just for the sake of going it. A lot of businesses do the mistake. Okay, I want to have the facility, I want to have this, and I tell them, for what? First, you need to know what you're going to use it for. Don't, till the time you have the business plan, or what you're going to actually, how you're going to make money out of it and how you're going to repay it, nobody's going to give you a trade finance. So that's the basic fundamentals. So I don't think the fundamentals do change with the current time. They remain the same.
Yep. So I think that leads us to end of the session. And there's one last question which is coming for Vikas here. Mahavir Hinger, he wants to know that, especially looking to the present situation, suppose SME wants to go ahead with digitization, whether Tally can help us with credit period of 2 to 3 years EMIs. Vikas, your comments on this?
Yeah, see, as an organization, we would definitely do how we can help the customers, and we can definitely, although we don't have a standard procedure on that front, but we can definitely get in touch on one-to-one and see what assistance can be extended to them. So we can take the details and we can definitely get in touch with them.
So I think with this, we can close the discussion. It looks like we have covered a good number of questions, and with this limited time, there's time to say goodbye. And so thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. And as informed earlier, we will be publishing this video soon on our channels, mostly on our website and Facebook. You can follow us to revisit this discussion. Our official Facebook handle is Tally Solutions Middle East. And for the benefit of all, I'll just share my screen so that you can take a look. So I believe you all can see my screen now. This is how our official channel looks like, Tally Solutions Middle East. If you search with this, you'll be able to see our official channel. This is how we promoted this particular event. And if you really like the session, if you really like the discussion, please leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll be glad to know your feedback. At the same time, the official website of Tally Solutions is tallysolutions.com. If you type in that, you don't need to type MENA. Automatically, it will understand you're typing in from MENA. So this is the home page you can see. And for the ESR webinar, you can go to resources. You can opt for webinars. And it will show you what's the next webinar on ESR. It's on 27 June, 11 a.m. You can register for that webinar right away. So it's time that we say goodbye. Thank you so much again for joining us today. And we wish you a great business year ahead. Stay safe, stay positive, and stay compliant. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, all the panel members, for joining us today.
Thank you, Priyesh. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, team Tally and Mr. Vikas, Panchal, and Priyesh for your excellent efforts in organizing this wonderful seminar. And we wish
Thank you so much, Professor, for taking your time out. Thanks, Mayank. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
All the best.
Okay, thank you. Bye.